You have got to be kidding me.
Therefore, as a faithful servant of the Enkindlers, we too must serve the Reapers.
You big, stupid jellyfish.
You know, I support religious freedom for all species, but that's just crazy.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Mass Effect Lorecast, and thank you for the reminder in the Discord channel to use that quote. Who was it? I'm trying to look through. Who was it that reminded me to do that? I should have thought of this as this was happening. It was Nikki Chu on Discord. Thank you for that reminder, Nikki. That was awesome. That's a great quote. Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, we are talking about jellyfish people, and this is your host, Tom or Robots, and I'm back with Sam and 711. What's going on, Sam? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Excellent recommendation to Nikki for that clip, because that is going to be perfectly relevant numerous times throughout this episode. The religious freedoms, the exact quests even that comes from has some pretty awesome lore implications. So, of course, I'm very happy that quote is in there, aside from the meme value. But yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I know that, we just spoke yesterday because we were both guesting on an episode of a different podcast. So Tom already knows this, but as I've discussed throughout a few different episodes in this series, I was looking for a job. Well, I finally found one.
Spit it out. All right.
That's the wrong button. That's the wrong button. That doesn't work either. All right. There it is. I found it.
There we go. So I finally got the job after many interviews. It was a daunting process, but yeah, very happy. And that means, of course, that maybe within a month, maybe a little bit more, I will be getting the gaming PC.
Yeah, you got to pay for things like your rent.
Yes, like rent and nom-noms.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Sure stays on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. I'll be excited to play some PC games with you and introduce you to that side of the world. And of course, we've got my Xbox Series X now, so I can play Xbox games with you on there as well. And man, it's going to be awesome. This is going to be super fun. But let's dive into our topic for the day. We're talking about not only the jellyfish people, the Hanar, but also the Drell. This is kind of a double race episode because they don't have as much info as some of the other races, right?
Yeah. So you nailed it. We're talking about the two species because their fates are so intertwined as well. So we had to include them on the same episode. They're both pretty unique to the Mass Effect universe, and one of them is the source of many in-game jokes. One of them is known for their severe adherence to etiquette, but if they don't kill you with kindness, they have other methods, like their cohabiting race of swamp monster assassins.
Yeah, sounds fun.
I wish the Drell sounded like that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Well, they don't. All right. Well, let's kick this off. So where do we start?
So we're going to start, as always, with a couple of idiomatic expressions that I think are perfectly relevant to each of these. And this is the first episode where we've done two. So this structure is going to be a little bit different from previous episodes on the races. And so for the Hanar, I think the best phrase to describe them is to stand on ceremony. And for those who are unfamiliar, to stand on ceremony means basically to be dripping with etiquette, to be so polite and proper that you're standing on ceremony.
Right. So and these are Drell, like the British.
Yes. The Queen's English.
The
Think
Queen's,
about how,
yeah, absolutely.
How proper the royal family is.
Right.
And the Drell, I think a good idiomatic expression is a trip down memory lane. Because the Drell, of course, have perfect recall, which we'll get into a little bit later.
Wouldn't that be nice?
As per usual, let's start with the biology of both species. One, the Hanar are one of the few non-bipedal species in the Milky Way. We actually just covered one of the other ones last week, the Elcor. But the Hanar are aquatic beings with long tentacles. So when they're on the Citadel, when they're on spaceships, and when they're on land, they quote unquote stand. You get the pun with stand on ceremony now. Mm-hmm. They stand using Mass Effect fields. And it kind of looks like they're even levitating. when they're quote unquote standing.
It does. They have this like floating through the air kind of quality to them. And I've always wondered about that because I don't remember playing through anything that explained it, but yeah. No,
they don't really explain it that well, but they do rely on the Mass Effect fields through the use of technology. There are a couple of things that the game doesn't explain, like how do the Hanar breathe in the oxygen, nitrogen, air atmosphere that's on the Citadel? How do they breathe in other atmospheres? Because they never appear to be wearing a helmet, and where would a helmet even go? On a Hanar.
Right. It's like the question that shows up all the time. Like, if this thing wore pants, would it wear it this way or this way?
Right. If a Hanar wore a helmet,
where would they
how
wear
would
it?
it wear it?
Would it be a full body helmet? Like, would it just cover like the front of its head? Like, how does that even work?
It would look like an upside down fish tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Hanar, their bodies look like a cross between jellyfish. More specifically, Medusozoas and Men of War. And I make that distinction, of course, because Men of War might be confused with jellyfish. But if you've never seen a Portuguese Man of War, definitely Google it. You want to know what those look like, especially if you're traveling a lot, because they have a nasty sting. And coincidentally, so do Hanar. The Hanar apparently secrete toxins, and they have a reputation for having a very strong grip. That's according to both Zaid and Thane. So that's two squad mates that tell us not to mess with Hanar's grip.
Yeah. I'm looking for a Man of War image right now to put up on the screen. I've got the Hanar up just for a reminder. I love, the other thing that I always thought about with Hanar was that the shape roughly looks like a dinosaur with 6 legs underneath it.
Oh yeah, it does. It looks like a bronchiosaurus.
Yeah, kind of like with the tail and then the head that comes up in the front, and then 6 legs with like 2 little humps on its back. And that's kind of always what I thought too when I saw these. But
cue the terrible harmonica Jurassic Park theme.
That's my harmonica impersonation.
They're magnificent. They are biologically genderless. This is kind of an inference that we have to make because there's no allusion to Hanar's gender in the series. They are all voiced by the same person, and 5 points to anyone in chat who can guess this before I'm going to say it. They are all voiced by Mark Meir, the voice of Commander Shepard, male Commander Shepard. So that is a pretty interesting thing. And I think that probably comes from a budget thing because you only have to pay one person then. Yeah. Those are conversations you have with voice actors when you get them on. You're like, hey, you're going to do this character, but we know you have some diversity in what you're able to do. Could you voice this character? And I can do something for that. Okay, good. We'll knock that out with some of your extra hours that are left over at the end. What's funny to me is that the clip that we played at the beginning, the "You Big Stupid Jellyfish," that is Mark Meir talking to Mark Meir. Right. So, and there's a lot of different instances of that because he also voices all of the Vorcha, which he said was pretty damaging to his voice because he had to do it with like a mouth half full of water. But I digress. Let's get back to the Hanar. Interestingly, it seems like they can breathe, but it's not explicitly explained, like I said. My guess is they use technology to accommodate them. If the writers wanted to, explain that through writing magic, that's the way that they're going to do it. There's also another unexplained byproduct of having evolved from their homeworld, Kage. That planet is completely covered in clouds, and it's because its powerful white star is beaming at Kage. And Kage they evolved on Kage, whose surface is 90% water. So the whole planet is covered in clouds, which would mean that not very much UV radiation gets through, right? Right. Because it's always cloudy. It's always overcast. So then wouldn't that mean that how would Hanar fare on different planets where there's more intense UV radiation, even Earth? Oh, right. Yeah. No, it sounds like they would burn. Right. Or they'd fry or get cancer more easily. There's a few different things that could happen. Yeah. Become calamari. I bet they're delicious. I wonder if anybody eats Hanar. According to Javik, they were. According to Javik, they were appetizers, and they were served either boiled or fried, which is pretty funny because Javik is a Prothean, but we will get there. First, I want to switch gears and talk about the Drell's biology, because we already talked about the Hanars just then. So the Drell are a reptile-like race, and that kind of is reflected in their face. It almost looks like they have gills on the side, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I always thought they were more fish-like.
It is interesting.
They're kind of this, like, I don't know, amalgamation of the two. But yeah, once you actually notice the gills and the scaly quality of like the top of their head, it was like that always struck me as more fish than like lizard, you know?
It is pretty interesting because they are explicitly I guess you could say just reptile race. They're not amphibians because they evolved from a planet that was completely devoid of, humid climates like that, Rakana. We will talk about Rakana in a little bit, but first I want to talk about their appearance so that people who are new to this series can understand clearly. Like reptiles, they have two sets of eyelids. And in the games, they have 5 digits on their hands with their middle digits fused, which would also seem that would, like, evolutionarily speaking, that would also indicate that maybe that was for swimming. But that's not the case. And also in the comics, those fingers are not fused. So there's some inconsistencies in the lore there. According to Morden, the mild venom present in Drell skin is enough to cause hallucinations upon oral contact. Give you 5 guesses why Morden brought that up.
'Cause he ate one.
That would be the preferable inference from that. But that's not the case. No. In fact, the entire race of Drell, this is a pretty fun trivia bit here. The entire race of Drell was apparently created after Thane was created. So thus they made everyone look like Thane. And Thane was created to be the romance option as an alien for female shepherd.
Yeah, so in my Mass Effect 2 playthrough, he was the one I romanced. And I've mentioned this before. He was also the only one who died in the final mission. And it was very tragic. It was so sad.
He's, I can see how he was written to be that romance option, because he's that dark, mysterious assassin with the heart of gold.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you're going to romance Thane, then something that your female shepherd should know is that his skin can cause you to hallucinate upon oral contact. That's Morden's advice.
It's good hallucinate or bad hallucinate?
I don't know. It's like, licking a toad. You're going to have a bad or a good trip. Who knows? I don't want to know.
It is like licking a toad. Oh no. Okay.
We need the Hypnotoad sound effect.
Yeah, that's what popped in my head was Hypnotoad. Maybe I can find it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah. And we were talking about amphibians. So unlike amphibians, the excess humidity in some environments leads to an early death for many Drell in the form of what's called Kepral's syndrome. And this affects the lungs, where the Drell cannot breathe. Their lungs do not process oxygen as efficiently anymore. But it's not contagious. And according to one of BioWare's writers who worked on the Drell, Patrick Weeks, this disease is largely based on cystic fibrosis.
Interesting. Yeah. As we talked about with many things on this show so far, so many of the things in this game are based off of real world corollaries. So that would make sense.
It would. And so it's interesting to see kind of almost a reverse cystic fibrosis in one of the alien species. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, the Drell acquire Kepral syndrome from humid climates, likely because they evolved from arid deserts on Rakana. And Rakana is a planet now completely uninhabitable from climate change. It became even more arid. The oceans were acidified, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, like we've said in previous episodes, what are the distinguishing characteristics of the races in question? Well, number one, with the Drell, as we've kind of already hinted, and as some have already mentioned in chat, the Drell have perfect recall. Thane remembers every assassination. He remembers every moment with his son in haunting detail. And this isn't, Thane is not unique here. This is a trait that is common to all Drell, where they can recall everything as if they are reliving it in the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that time at night when it's like 2 a.m, you can't fall asleep and your brain decides to remember that really embarrassing thing you did when you were a teenager. It's like that on steroids because you remember every detail of everything. Ugh.
That's a curse. Yeah. I'd rather not have that.
Yeah. Oof. And the way you felt during it, just all of those feelings from emotional teenage version of yourself, just rushing back into your brain. Ooh, no, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've watched the Netflix series Black Mirror, but there's an episode where there's a technological implant that the people have and they can relive any memory that they have, at any point. It's like they have DVR for life. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be a curse for humanity, at least, because there's so many painful memories that we like to forget. Yeah.
Psychologically, this is one of those things that's really interesting. Human recall is actually one of the least accurate things you can do, which is weird because in a legal system, it's one of the most highest forms of evidence. And it really shouldn't be, because every time we remember a situation, we actually rewrite the memory in our head. So that memory you have of when you were a kid and you got caught stealing the cookies or whatever, that's not actually how it happened. You've recalled that memory so many times, and every time your brain has changed it a little bit, and it is no longer the same. And that is hard for us to stomach because it makes it feel like we don't actually have a grasp on reality. But guess what? We don't. That's the truth. So being able to remember those things accurately would help with, say, a judicial system, but I don't know. I don't know that I want a direct memory, a link to everything in the past. Then again, the upside is all those positive things, you get older and a loved one passes away, and at least you have all those memories you can recall of the good times that you spent together, and they do live forever in your mind. So it is kind of a double-edged sword.
And for the Drell, one would guess that there is an evolutionary advantage to this, right? Yeah. Otherwise, why would they have it? I wish I could posit some suggestions as to why they have evolved this way, but unfortunately, there's just not enough in the lore to positively identify why they have this kind of memory.
Well, typically, mental adaptions like emotions it's theorized that they were evolutionarily advantageous in order to mold our behavior. So if you do something that's dangerous and you feel scared, then you're less likely to do it again in the future because you were scared. If you do something that is positive and you get a positive feeling from it, then you're more likely to do that thing. And that's the foundation for emotional reaction. That's why other mammals look like they have emotions, because they do. Like when your dog is actually happy or sad, it is. It's very similar to a feeling that we would feel, just in a dog version, right? Something like memory, I would assume, works in a very similar kind of way, in that it helps model our behavior moving forward in ways that are evolutionarily advantageous. And so we have that ability. Now, why it would be even stronger than our ability to remember things and more accurate, I don't know. Maybe they just have a longer development cycle where that was something that became very crucial. Maybe they lived in a very dangerous environment where they had to memorize their ways through the environment in very specific detail to make sure that they survived. And so that became something that got passed on. It could be any of those kinds of things.
I think it could. And I wonder how it plays into their new homeworld, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's interesting with his memory. Thane almost appears apologetic to Shepard because he understands very well that Shepard does not have the same kind of memory. So that is definitely one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Drell. Mm-hmm. For the Hanar, there's no There's no question about it. Their distinguishing characteristic is they are excessively polite when they're speaking, specifically to other races, and everything must be proper. They literally never lose their cool. Even when they want to kill another being, they speak about it very cool and very collected.
That's awesome. I love that.
They traditionally communicated with other Hanar via patterns of bioluminescence. My first thought when I read that was that, of course they did, because that's easy to animate.
Right.
There's no facial animation needed there.
Yeah. I love the discussions of like, you know what? I'm sorry, but I'm just going to have to murder you now. Just like
this one apologizes for your imminent death.
Yeah, right. Like it's just matter of fact and polite.
Yeah.
No hard feelings, but you no longer deserve to survive. Like, okay, thanks.
This one regrets your course of action has led you to this end.
Right. Like, just like, all right. Yeah.
And so they communicate via patterns of those bioluminescence, and obviously other species can't really read that, so they need help from technology to translate that. My guess is something embedded in the Omni tool. And the Hanar, speaking of speech, they have two names. So they have a public one, a face name, and they have a private one, which is what they call a soul name. And only their family members and very closest confidants ever learn the soul name. That's something that they don't tell anyone, even people they're working on missions with. And they never refer to themselves in the first person because they're afraid of appearing arrogant, which is why I was saying this one or it.
Right. It's kind of like a Khajiit.
And that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yep.
This one thinks the skooma is strong here. Would you like to share some? I
would love to see like a crossover between Khajiit and Hanar, like a Khajiit Hanar play of like, I don't know, like some think of some Shakespeare play like Hamlet, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Or Romeo and Juliet with Khajiit and Hanar.
How this one loves you. Let this one count the ways. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good.
It's funny because if we were talking about Romeo and Juliet, that would be even worse for the Hanar because they refuse to tolerate any impolite or rude speech. And because of this, members of other races sometimes view them as elitist, which they can come across as such because they're so polite in how they speak that it can come across as condescending, if not passive aggressive.
Sure. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Interestingly enough, Hanar myths suggest that the Protheans, who they call the Enkindlers, uplifted their race with the ability to communicate. And I would say speak, but they don't speak per se to other Hanar.
Right.
So, yeah, that's really interesting that their myths say they learned to communicate because the Protheans intervened.
Right. And it probably sounds a lot like this.
What was that?
That's the hypnotoad sound.
Oh, that's the hypnotoad sound.
Yeah. Anyway, I found it. So the Protheans directly intervened in their evolution, but they didn't communicate before that. It seems like they got involved very early.
They did. And in fact, Kage, their homeworld, is covered in Prothean ruins. And that's likely that has likely formed the basis for the entirety of Hanar religion. The Hanar have a holiday specifically dedicated to celebrating the gift of speech.
Right.
That's something to behold, because if they have an entire holiday with its own competitions and poetry readings associated with it, that means that they really, really, really value the gift of speech. It is they have put it on a pedestal, so to speak. No pun intended.
I mean, it's evolutionarily, it's one of the reasons. It's one of the justifications for why intelligent species are more intelligent. Like it's not only a sign of intelligence, it's a thing that allows us to be even more intelligent because we can share information and pass it on to others and then keep it. if it wasn't for speech, we would, I mean, you can't be specific without speech.
We would not be able to pass on knowledge, to other generations.
Right. You can't, you never get writing without speech. You never get social developments without speech beyond certain, basic systems like you would find in, say, chimpanzees or something like that.
And we would never have perfected farming techniques, which was like the very basis of civilization. So, we could go on, and I could go on about Hanar religion, but it's definitely its own topic. And I think we have more time for that after the break.
All right, let's do it.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am sovereign, and this station is mine. I like the sound of that.
All right, so we've got a few things to do in the mid-break. First of all, thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you for helping to support the show. Sam and I very, very much appreciate this. I mean, you guys are what enable us to keep doing this. I've mentioned this before. Doing podcasts is my full-time job. So this show and the other shows that I do and running the Robots Radio Network is what I do for a living. And support from you, the listener, enables me to keep doing this. And it also helps Sam do it as well. And you guys are just absolutely phenomenal. So thank you to everyone who has supported the show. I'm pulling up the list right now, and holy moly, we've got 30 patrons as of right now. I believe I stated that as like a goal in one of the last few episodes. But thank you to everybody. That's amazing. 30 people. And especially thank you to Sovereign, our tier 5 patron. Anybody tier 5 or higher gets called out every month. So thank you very, very much, Sovereign. And thank you to all of our tier 4 patrons. We've got a whole bunch of you guys coming to join us next week, right at this showtime. We are currently live on twitch.tv/Robots Radio at 10:30 we start, and we will have, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of you joining us. It's going to be a big full house, and it's going to be amazing. We're very much looking forward to that. So if you want to help support the show, if you want to join us next week, you've got time still in order to upgrade your status on Patreon or sign up. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/cyberpunk, not cyberpunk. That was the show I just did. Mass Effect Lorecast. I do 2 shows in one night and then everything gets all mixed up. But you can go there and sign up. You get ad-free episodes. You get the banter of us and, before or after the show, all the extended stuff from the episodes that have shown up on the Patreon. All of that stuff is available. So go check that out. And thank you again to all of our patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing. Also, we had a giveaway this last little while, right? Like it's been about a month and a half now that we've been doing it. And we decided to pull some winners, or a winner. We only have one winner, but we have a kind of what's the phrase for it? What did you stated in here? Like it's not a runner up. It's kind of like a honorable mention. That's the word I was looking for. So here, check this out. I'm going to show the clips on the video while we talk about that. There is Sam, Commander Sam Shepard, right there. Look at his face, and then look at Sam's face. Identical. I mean, this is absolutely. There's no difference here, right? No difference at all.
Right, I'll try to do the same face.
Make the same face. Ready? Go. Very good. All right. We've got that. And then we've got me. And there I am. And here I am in real life. Here, let me take the hat off. So. How's that look? Don't mind doing it. I got to take my glasses off too.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Look nonchalant, like you're trying to play it cool.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, absolutely spot on. Super spooky. I don't know how you made us look exactly like how we normally do. Very, very good. And our winner is D-Coats. So D-Coats, thank you.
D-Coats, also known as auto-briciation. If you're listening to this, you have won the giveaway.
So congratulations. Yeah, reach out to us. Send us a message on the Discord or on Twitter. Just however you want to private message us. We'll reach out to you too. And all we really need is an email address and which type of $50 gift card you would like. Do you want one for Steam? Do you want one for PlayStation? Do you want one for Xbox? And we will send that out to you. So thank you so much for everyone who entered. And our runner-up, I didn't pull the images for this one, but the runner-up is Sovereign, our tier 5 patron. Sovereign, thank you so much. Thanks for throwing some entries in there. Unfortunately, they weren't quite as perfect as Decoats, but you did a good job. So thanks and everyone else who took time to make versions of us. Thank you so much. All right. So we also have a planet to discuss in the middle of the episode. This middle of the episode is absolutely jam-packed, Sam. All sorts of stuff. Oh, yeah. Which one are we talking about?
Lots of goodies.
I'm pulling it up right now. Boop.
Let's talk about a planet that is perfectly relevant to both the Hanar and the Drell. And this planet, I'll give you 5 guesses who named it. It is called Rough Tide. One would guess that's
Roll Tide?
Probably named by the Hanar. Rough Tide.
Rough Tide.
Not Roll Tide. God,
Roll
no.
Tide.
I can't the planet. Can't stand the Crimson Tide.
Oh, no. You're going to get hate mail for that.
Oh, I am. Except from the Auburn fans. They're going to be like, hell yeah, brother. Or whatever they say. I don't know.
You'll get some mail from both places. Yeah. That's what they say. Hell yeah, brother.
So I picked this planet because it is perfectly relevant to both. And let's just read the description here. It is a brief one. It says, a dwarf planet with a shroud of carbon monoxide and dioxide that keeps it warm. Rough Tide was so named when large veins of platinum and palladium were struck and miners from all over the cluster came in to stake their claims. Hanar police and their Drell enforcers clashed with Krogan and Vorcha in an ugly series of race riots in the late 2170s, and the planet has only grudgingly kept a shaky peace since then.
That sounds no good.
I'm imagining some crazy fights because if you look at the planet card, it says that the surface gravity is only 1/10 of Earth's gravity. So 1/10 of Earth gravity. And apparently there was some serious fighting going on.
I have pictures of miners doing like moon, like rocket jumps, like with mining picks, like hitting each other, trying to get at the minerals.
Yeah, I'm imagining the episode of Futurama where they're miners on the moon, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're whaling with harpoons. Yep. But yeah, that's the planet.
All right. Well, cool, man. All right. Well, that's the middle of the show. Why don't we get back to our main topic? Here we go.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
All right. So, back to the Hanar and the Drell. So, do the Hanar worship the Protheans? Because the Protheans gave them speech. I mean, that's almost like Hephaestus giving men the ability to, have an alphabet, or whatever it was that he in the Greek lore, right? And then how did the Drell become all mixed up with the Hanar? Because there's some connections there, right? How does that all work?
Yeah, there are. Their fates are completely intertwined. And I want to address the first question first. So the Hanar definitely do worship the Protheans, but they call them the Enkindlers. So like I mentioned before the break, Prothean ruins were scattered all over the homeworld of the Hanar, the Kage, and religious communities popped up around these. So religious communities revere the Protheans as gods. And this is really the one topic, it seems, that's capable of making Hanar break social conventions and quote unquote disturbing the peace. Exact tenets of mainstream Enkindler religion are kind of unknown, but the Hanar do credit them with the creation of the mass relays, the Citadel, and virtually all of modern galactic society, or at least the building blocks of it. And of course, this isn't true. And when confronted with the truth that the Protheans did not create the mass relays, create the Citadel, that it was actually the Reapers, they react like you would expect, total denial. There's a conversation where you can bring Javik to the Citadel in Mass Effect 3, and Javik is, of course, the Prothean squad mate. And I encourage anyone that hasn't done that to do so, because Javik will interact with a Hanar at the Citadel embassies. And there's like so many great lore bits there because this is a Hanar meeting an Enkindler. And so there's this Hanar is seeing their god in the flesh.
Yeah.
And there's some extreme cults of Enkindler religion where they think that the Enkindlers are there's going to be a second coming of the Enkindlers, and they're going to wipe all of these sinners off the face of the earth. There's one cult that preaches total fire and brimstone that way, considering all organic life to be flawed and sinners, and the Enkindlers will return and yada yada yada. It sounds a lot like some sects of Christianity expecting the rapture and the second coming.
Right. And
we should, I guess, take this one specific detail, maybe with a grain of salt, maybe not, but it's according to Mass Effect Andromeda Annihilation, which the author coordinated greatly with BioWare to make. And, that makes it basically, I guess, virtually canon. The Hanar do have these extreme cults. And like I mentioned, religion is one of those topics that can push a Hanar to the edge of protesting, which for Hanar is a big move. So more than just the preacher in Mass Effect 1, I think we all are acquainted with that preacher. More than just that preacher, some Prothean dig sites are picketed by Hanar who want their holy sites to remain sacred and untouched.
Wait, do they wind one of their little tentacles around like a picket sign?
I'm imagining that they do that, or they use like Mass Effect fields to levitate the signs,
or they create like a some sort of bioluminescence in shapes of words, like floating in the air or something. I don't know.
Hell no, these ones won't go.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So, that's. They do, though. That's canon. They have protested these Prothean dig sites, and they want them to remain untouched. As I mentioned earlier, the Protheans considered the Hanar to be appetizers. So they considered them to be, best served boiled or fried. And so that's why I said it was funny, because Javik actually tells us that. And then Javik can potentially meet a Hanar in real life, in the game in real life, in real time. And they're like, oh, our God. And he's like, cool, a bloomin' onion.
Right. Why would you teach the food to talk?
That's the confusing thing.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the differential that we made sure to enunciate in the Protheans episode, where Prothean was both the name of their race and it was also the name of their empire.
Right.
And of course, there were several different races engulfed into the empire.
Right.
So I'm thinking, what if the race who put all of the Prothean ruins on Kashyyyk is not the same race that Javik is, but they are part of the same empire.
Right. And we've talked about this too before, like just because human is a race doesn't mean that some humans believe something and some other humans believe something else. Like if we had the ability to evolve something that we eat into an intelligent species because we just wanted to, there might be some humans who do that. And then other humans who have a hard time moving on and thinking of them not as food, especially if you're divided by the distance of space from like one planet to another. Right. Like it doesn't just because somebody's a Prothean, even if they are the race Prothean, doesn't mean that they have the same mentality towards this stuff as every other Prothean. Like people are individuals, groups are different groups with different agendas. Yeah. Within that. So
they're not monolithic.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Although they were unified in their goal during the Reaper War and their cycle, they're certainly not monolithic. And it's funny on the topic of religion, because although the traditional Drell religion is polytheistic, almost all of them are deeply spiritual. And so they believe in some kind of soul and body harmonic connection, where if you do some things that please your body but displease your soul, then you will become disconnected. And it works vice versa. If you do some things that please your soul but displease your body, like you are slovenly, then you will become disconnected. And there's a lot of real world religions that mimic this kind of ideology. But that's kind of what the Drell believe in largely. Okay,
so how did these two get intertwined? How did the Dwell the Drell and the Hanar get connected?
So here's where it gets interesting, because some Drell actually believe in the Hanar and Kindler religion. And as you said, how did they come to learn about it? Well, the answer to that question lies in a social agreement called the Compact. And the Compact is critical to understanding Drell's history. The Drell were a very advanced civilization, and like I said, had their own homeworld named Rakana. Mm-hmm. But the problem was that they expanded too quickly for Rakana to handle. Starting around the 14th century of our current era, the Drell's rapid industrial age began ruining the planet's climate, acidifying its oceans, ruining any possible farmland, and making all the necessary resources way too scarce for a burgeoning population. And unfortunately, they reached their industrial age, and their industrial age exploded way too quickly to allow the Drell any time to reach space flight, meaning that all 11 billion of them were trapped on a dying world.
Right. I mean, what's scary about this is that this is something that could have happened on Earth, and we may be at the ending stages of, if we don't take, seriously the changes that we're making to our planet. And for those of you listening, this is not a political thing. This is a science thing. These are facts. Just putting it out there. This is not an agenda thing. We're talking about scientific and historical facts that are verified. But imagine if the space race didn't happen and it was even delayed by 50 years. Or imagine that some of the social agendas of the world didn't happen. So we ended up with a more polluting, more savage industrialization period like we had at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, where you ended up with cities like London that were just covered in smog. And if social programs didn't stick when they did, then we would have had that exploitation longer and no need to advance beyond that. And had that happened, we may have been on a much more steep ramp towards global warming and the destruction of our environment. So this this mirrors some of what we're doing as if it was taking more extremely, which is interesting because that's really scary. So wouldn't this also be called the Great Filter?
I believe so. I think that there's an ample amount of speculation and also, some substantial theories out there. And forgive me if has the audio changed? Has the audio changed at all for me? Okay, good, because I just had some technical difficulties.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, but yeah, this I believe I've seen a lot of forums where people are saying, "Oh, the Drell and the Great Filter," and how it has become somewhat of an overplayed sci-fi trope. Mm-hmm. But this isn't where the Drell's story ends. This continues for several hundred years. And it's also the situation that the Hanar walk or float into when they make first contact with the Drell in the 1980s, in our 1980s for the current era. And for context, the Hanar had achieved space flight about 2 millennia beforehand. We know this because they made contact with the Citadel around the year 300 BCE.
Okay.
So they make contact in the 1980s. They notice that the Drell are in a dying world and they have not achieved space flight. And instead of the humanity's sci-fi trope War of the Worlds, scary advanced aliens come in and blow us all up, the Hanar take it the opposite way. The Hanar spend the next 10 years launching a massive race against the clock rescue effort to taxi the Drell off of Rakana and to Kage before their projected doomsday, which was 2025. Wow. So in about 3.5 years from now. Wow.
That's really cool. I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine humanity being okay, even if we were in the dregs of an overheating world and a lack of food and those kinds of things. How many people wouldn't trust an alien race, especially one that doesn't look humanoid, to come and save us from something like that?
Well, as I understand it, it wasn't like they had a choice. The consequences were dire. And
I bet some people
constant wars.
Yeah, I bet some people decided to stay, just would not accept it. and planted their flag in the ground and said, well, this is my home and I'm going to starve here. And if that's what happens, that's what happens.
And that is what happens. Perhaps I'd like to kind of examine just why the Hanar did this. And I would think that it's because of the knowledge of their Prothean intervention in their cultural uplifting, learning speech, that they felt it was their collective obligation to step in, intervene, and rescue the Drell.
A pay it forward kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or perhaps it just gave them the justification to say, intervention isn't bad.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I'm sure that there were some Hanar that said, should we be meddling like this? But all they needed to do was point to their own history and say, okay, another race intervened on behest of us and it worked out pretty well. In fact, we have a whole holiday about it. So in total, over the 10 years, about 375,000 Drell were saved.
That's a very small percentage.
It is.
Of
and
11 billion.
I would imagine part of this is because, like you said, some people did not want to leave. Some Drell did not want to leave.
Yeah.
I imagine the other reason is because the Hanar never had a large navy. The Hanar didn't have a Turian-sized navy that they could, flock, huge groups of people off of planet with. And the other thing is that the rest perished. The rest of the Drell died. In Mass Effect 3, at the time of Mass Effect 3, there are still some pockets of Drell numbering in the hundreds, like very small pockets of Drell who are still somehow surviving on Rakana. But all the rest of them are either in, interstellar space or they are on Kashyyyk. And so to repay the debt of their rescue, the Drell enter a social contract called the Compact, where they agree to do the tasks that the Hanar find too difficult. I put too difficult in quotes for a purpose. Effectively, this meant that the Hanar now had a servant class. And for whatever reason, most Drell resent that characterization. I know that some Drell servants become, quote unquote, like family to their Hanar masters, even learning their soul names, which is a big deal. But come on, maybe facing the reality that Kashyyyk isn't their world is painful. They supposedly have a choice to refuse being called to service, being called to become a servant of any Hanar. But it's not exactly like social influences aren't at play here. As Thane puts it, being requested to serve is an honor. That would indicate to me that if someone refuses to serve, they are viewed as ungrateful,
Right.
And perhaps become an outcast.
Right. Which seems indoctrinated. It seems like one of those things that you are taught to. This is the social status. This is what is regular because we define it to be so, because we are the Hanar, and they are so polite, right? So this is an honor for you. Like that's the way they would probably present it, right? Like, yeah, that's, I also did the math on this. So the, how many survived? The 375,000 is roughly 0.00002% of the population of 11 billion. And this is one of those things that we as humans have a hard time, conceiving of. Billion, that's 11 with 9 zeros, right? Like that's a big number. 375,000 has 3 zeros. Those are very different numbers. This isn't 11 million to 300. No, this is 11 billion.
So that's roughly one metro area. 375,000 is a small metro area.
Oh yeah. Like think about our current planet. We have 7.5 billion people. That would be the equivalent of a city of about, 250,000 people surviving, 200 and something thousand people, like percentage wise. So that would be like, heck, I live in Florida. Like I have to drive an hour in order to get to a city that small. Like
I think it would be like Columbus, Ohio surviving.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's everybody on the planet. Humanity. You just pick one average city in America. That's who survives.
You mean it's all Ohio? Always has been.
Always has been. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's what it would be like. That's think about how devastating that is to the Drell who do survive. And then you kind of get the right perspective, I think, because Thane puts it pretty nicely to us, perhaps out of a desire, again, not to appear ungrateful, but other Drell aren't so forgiving about their status as a client race. According to Mass Effect Andromeda Annihilation, again, the domed city on Kage, where almost all Drell live, and as we were saying, it's one metro area, all the Drell have to live in one domed city on Kage, because if they don't, it's immediate death from Kepral syndrome. All of Kage is covered in water, and that water is being vaporized into clouds. So if they don't live in this domed city, they almost die immediately from Kepral syndrome. And the domed city is basically a massive slum. So it's either live in the massive slum that is riddled with crime and poverty, accept the call to service, die from Kepral syndrome immediately, or get off the planet, get the hell out of there, and make a living somewhere else somehow.
Right.
Those are the options.
In a universe that's not designed for your species.
Yeah. And those are the options. That's it.
Yeah. That's rough.
And, you know, with 375,000 people, I think the Drell would be lucky to have a Citadel embassy. You know, it's not like they're going to have their own political clout.
No, I mean, they don't even have their own planet, let alone, you know, planets or, you know, multi-planet spanning race of intelligent people. Like it's a very, very small population compared to all of these other races that are movers and shakers in the universe. Right.
And, you know, Thane tells us a lot of what we do know from the lore when it comes to Drell. So we have to rely on Thane's
perspective
narrative alone.
Yeah.
You know, so he might be his lenses through which he views life from his experiences might be colored a certain way.
Oh, sure.
And so Thane tells us that the Hanar rely on the Drell to carry out assassinations. That much is, you know, verifiable. That's just a fact. That's not opinionated. Mm-hmm. They rely on the Drell to, among other things, carry out these assassinations, which in my opinion, not very polite. But because the Hanar aren't terribly adept at combat outside of water.
Oh, sure.
And I imagine that killing someone is work that's considered too dirty for a race bent on etiquette. Probably.
But yeah, I can't imagine them floating around with like a dagger in their tendrils, like sneaking up on people like that. Yeah. Somebody who's designed more like a bipedal hominid is probably much more capable of that kind of thing.
Right, which the Drell are. I mean, their bodies look almost identical to human and Asari bodies, with the exception of their fingers being webbed.
Sure.
So yeah, then that brings us to kind of the military. So one would think if the Hanar have a very small navy, but now they have this client race, and their client race is pretty strong, pretty fast, pretty adept. That spells conscription for me, right? So, and that is kind of how it goes. Their ground forces, the Hanar's ground forces, are primarily composed of Drell spies, assassins, clandestine operatives, saboteurs, that kind of thing.
Guerrilla warfare.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Not direct warfare, because it's not like the Drell are not Krogan. They're not shock troops, but that's what they have. That's what the Hanar have, basically. They have a very limited source of troops, but to use at their disposal effectively because of the compact. Kage is protected by a planet-wide automated defense system, but that system is vulnerable to indoctrinated, compromising its integrity. This is why I said at the very beginning that I was glad that we brought up that audio clip, because it's very important. Because that audio clip is from a mission called Citadel, Hanar Diplomat in Mass Effect 3. And at first glance, Citadel, Hanar Diplomat appears to be a rather inconsequential side mission. Just another email that you get. Just another thing that slides across Shepard's desk. And
yeah. One more thing I have to do before I save the world and the universe.
Yeah, it's another grocery list item.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like, but that's not it. And I encourage anyone that has, overlooked it to please go and do it, because its lore implications are immense. Spoilers, you've been warned from here on out. I don't want to hear another review where it's like, oh, In7 Legend spoiled it. Like,
it's a lore cast. That's what happens. All right, go on.
Right.
Yeah.
So spoilers specific to Mass Effect 3 and Citadel Hanar Diplomat. The Hanar in this mission, the Hanar helped an alliance, the Systems Alliance. They helped them raid a Batarian facility where they were studying Reaper technology. Jondum Bao, a Solarian Spectre, monitored the situation, and he's afraid that some of the Hanar have become indoctrinated, some of the Hanar from the mission. Well, it turns out that one of them is, and this Hanar uploaded a virus to shut down Kaje's entire defense network. Like, think of the Aegis missile system, but for the whole planet.
Yeah.
And now it has been shut down. And so the Reapers are just going to cakewalk through. That would spell the end of the Hanar and also the end of all Drell, basically.
Yeah, both races.
Here's where this one gets interesting. If you didn't recruit Kasumi, then Shepard has to choose ultimately between rescuing Bao, who at the apex of this quest is getting strangled by another indoctrinated human, or Shepard can choose to stop the upload. If the upload of the virus is stopped, then Kaje is saved, and the Hanar dedicate Drell combat specialists to the war against the Reapers to repay the favor of saving their entire homeworld. If you choose to save Jondum Bao, all of the Hanar are killed, their homeworld is decimated, and they can't dedicate anything to the war effort, and basically all Drell are dead.
That's total bummer. That's no good.
Yeah, that's a massive lore implication, right?
Yeah.
Just from seemingly an inconsequential side mission that might take you 10 minutes to complete.
Right. No, that's two whole societies just wiped off the map.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
It's huge. Plus, I wouldn't mind having a bunch of Drell assassins on my side. That seems pretty cool.
I wouldn't either. They're pretty badass, but this is also, societally a huge move for the Hanar, considering how isolationist they are. The Hanar to this point have tried to actively isolate from any communities. And when I say communities, I use that word loosely. They've tried to isolate themselves from the galaxy at large, basically, because how many worlds have they colonized? When you look at the Hanar, I think that there's only 3 or 4 different worlds where they actually have Hanar living there. Part of that is probably because of the unique circumstances they need to survive. Part of the other reason is probably because of gravity. They evolved in water. They probably can't handle much gravity without excessive use of technology. The other reasons are because their economy is so small and so dedicated to the Hanar, which if you've looked at their physiology, because they rely on tentacles and they, live in the water, all of the products that are made for Hanar are virtually unusable for everyone else. So it's not like they have a booming export industry. Right.
That makes sense. They're kind of isolated when it comes to all of that.
One would wonder to how the Drell have adapted. One of the ways that they adapted was by getting these implants in their eyes, which actually allow them to see the bioluminescence that Hanar put out. So the byproduct of that, I think Thane tells us, is that he sees some things on the ultraviolet spectrum as a silvery color, but he cannot tell the difference between dark red and black.
Weird.
It is weird.
So in ultraviolet it's almost like it shifted his spectrum up.
Yeah.
Because it removed the low end of the spectrum, but increased the high end of the spectrum.
It did.
So instead of extending the spectrum up, it shifted everything. I wonder if he sees color shift, like if you were playing in Photoshop and you just shift the hue and it all the colors just move in a direction.
Yeah. I wonder if Asari's skin tones look more indigo to him.
Yeah.
Like all of them look more indigo.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's really interesting.
But yeah, that's kind of like, that's how isolationists the Hanar are. So dedicating their Drell combat specialists to the war is a big move, because they don't really get involved in wars that don't concern like directly them. And since it seems that Shepard just saved Kage from the Reaper invasion, that's a big move. That's pretty much where we're at then with the interaction between the Drell and the Hanar. And so there is a type of power dynamic going on, I think, because it's not like the Drell have anywhere else to go. And yet they're living on a planet that is lethal to them.
Yeah. Now, that makes a lot of sense. It's a very interesting dynamic. Another good episode, Sam. Another good one. Thanks for the follow, Bioshockingly, on Twitch. By the way, before we wrap up this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming down the line. Thank you to everybody who has shown up to join us live. Really, really appreciate it. We've got currently, at least from what I can see, 17 of you watching on Twitch and three of you watching on YouTube. I would love to. I love all the comments. I love reading everybody's thoughts because everybody has different experiences, especially when we're live. And to get your feedback live as we do this is awesome. So I would love to hit like 30 concurrent viewers for the live shows. So that's kind of my goal. So if you have the opportunity to join us on Sunday nights starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, then please do so. We'd love to have you come join us. And this is all about building community and nerding out with you guys about the things that we all love. So I'd love to see more of that. But wonderful episode. This is I didn't realize there was as much detail in some of this. Even though I paid a lot of attention to the Drell, and specifically, what's his face? When I can't even remember his name when I romanced him. Thane. Names fall out of my brain. You guys know that. But yeah, this is very interesting stuff. So we will be back next week with our patron episode talking about, and this is going to be controversial. We're going to get, I am predicting a significant amount of fan mail about this, where people are going to say, yeah, that person's absolutely right. That other person's absolutely wrong. They're crazy, because we are talking about which ending to the trilogy is the best ending. And we've got a bunch of people in on that chat, at least 9 patrons potentially. And so we hope to see you guys join us next week for that. I'd love to see some thoughts in chat, because I think this is going to be a really entertaining episode to do live with you guys. So that's coming up next week. And then, Sam, do you have an idea? We're kind of working our way through all the different races. Where do you think we're going to go after that?
We are. There's only so many different races in Mass Effect. And so we can't just keep making race episodes forever.
Just make them up.
As lazy as that would be for the writing of this show. No, we can't do that. But what I'm thinking of is perhaps we do a sub-series of episodes on factions.
Yeah.
And we cover Cerberus. We cover the Systems Alliance. We cover the Blue Suns, Eclipse, those different merc bands like the Blood Pack. We cover even some of the corporations of the universe like Exogeny.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I love factions. In the Fallout Lorecast, we have entire sections of that show dedicated to the different factions. And then we even did the same thing in Elder Scrolls. So I think factions is a wonderful idea. Very cool. So that one looks like it's kind of set up for after the patron chat. And by the way, if you're listening to this after the fact, it is July 18th. And so if you are listening within a week, you still have time to sign up for the Patreon if you want to be included on that live discussion about which ending is the best. And I will say that I think we have at least one patron who preferred the Control or Blue ending. Yep.
And that is the hot take. That's not a very popular ending to choose. So I think I would like to see a decent representative portion of people defend each of the endings. I want to see a fair bit of people. I don't want it to be didactic and monolithic, at all. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would love to see people defend the refuse/reject ending, where you refuse all the options. Because if you've played the game, spoiler, if you've played the game, you know how that ends. It doesn't end well. It's basically game over. You have failed.
Yeah. So Combat Vet Gaming says we need a Corians episode.
We do. I think we covered a lot of Corian culture during the Geth War episode. Mm-hmm. I was considering doing a part 2 to basically every race. And I was and we are going to be doing a number of episodes based off of the individual squad mates. So we are going to be going over each of those squad mates' races, culture as part of a product and how that produced that individual, how that individual came from that society. For example, how Tally was influenced by Quarian culture. And so I think those two things are inextricable. So I was either considering doing a part 2 to some races like the Batarian episode, but we spent a lot of time talking about how the Batarians are they get a bad rap. But we didn't have enough time basically to talk about Batarian culture, Batarian religion, government, that kind of thing.
We'll be coming back to some of that stuff too. So we've got so much to cover still. So we've got, believe me, we're not going to run out of any topics anytime soon. So, plus there's always other angles to look at this stuff too. Like here's the information, but then there's questions and theories and all sorts of other things that we can cover over time. So yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited to get into that stuff, and I'm especially excited to talk to our patrons next week. So make sure that if you are a patron and you are a tier 4 or 5 patron, that you are connected to the Discord and that you are in there chatting with us and that you're ready to go for next week. And we'll be starting at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. So very, very cool. Thanks everybody for joining us. Sam, do you have anything else going on that you want to share before we head out?
Well, we got the Xbox Game Pass show tomorrow night, and I am going to be streaming some Game Pass games and or Mass Effect tomorrow during the day. I'll put out some feelers on the Discord, see who wants to join me, maybe for a Game Pass gang day, and see if anyone wants to co-stream there. And of course, I'll let everyone know on Twitter at N7Legend and my Twitch at N7Legend when I will be going live.
Awesome. And if you have an Xbox or a PC and you want to join us playing games at any point, whether we're streaming or not streaming, then please check out the Game Pass gang in the Discord. We'd love to have you along. You don't have to have Game Pass to join us. You just have to have some of the games that we're playing. And if you do pick up Game Pass, then all the more opportunity to try some of the new games as they come out and things like that. So go check that out. And if you are interested in finding out what's coming out for Game Pass or our opinions about some of the games as we try them out, then come join us tomorrow night, same time, same channel, just on Mondays instead of Sundays. And we love to see you there. All right, everybody, that's what I've got going on too. The other things that I do, of course, can all be found at robotsradio.net for all the different lorecasts and podcasts that I do and podcasts that are on the network. There's a bunch of stuff to get into. If you're into more than Mass Effect and other games, chances are there's probably a lorecast for it at this point. There's a few I don't do yet, but I've got my eyes on some things, so we'll see if I can figure out more. If I can squeeze more time into my schedule, maybe we can knock out some others as well. Also, if you are interested in starting your own podcast and you want some help doing that and you want to be associated with the Robots Radio Network and get a real jump start on it with some really great ideas, some instruction on how to do it technologically, and also, formatting your show, and then also marketing your show to make sure that you have an audience. These are all things that I help other people out with, and it's part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club. You can learn more about that at robotsradio.net as well. If you have an awesome idea for a show and you are a creator that wants some help with that, I would love to work with you. We've got some awesome creators. We meet every week and we all help each other out. So come check us out for that. And that's all we got going on for this week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will see you again next week or maybe even tomorrow night. All right, guys. See you later. Thanks for tuning into the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.